Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of whatever the fuck this is called. We'll call it the discourse. Call it some kind of discourse slash progressive army special. We're here. We're queer. Get used to it. Oh wait, that's just me. But we're here with a very special guest, Aaron. Was it Bowersock?
Bowersock,
yeah. Your last name?
Mm-hmm.
Bowersock. Great. And we are here to talk about his time at the People's Summit last week.
This past weekend.
Yeah. This past weekend. I'm sorry. I mean, honest with you guys, I was not keeping up with the happenings at the People's Summit. I was busy doing other things. I was keeping up with more pride-oriented stuff going on around that kind of and so the People's Summit kind of was just happening in the periphery for me. So I'm glad to be able to sit down and talk to people who were both there. And I'm also here with John, of course, Alexan3rTheMeh, who was keeping closer tabs on it.
But still, unlike Aaron, I was keeping like peripheral tabs on it as well. I was still watching videos. I was still seeing what was going on, but I wasn't paying as close attention to it as I did last year.
So Aaron, why don't you just, because I'm a vulgar critic of this whole thing. I'm just completely an uneducated savage. Can you just break down what the People's Summit is actually? Like what is it?
Sure. So I think the main takeaway is that it is a conference that wants to bring together people, I feel, to work within the two-party system to really push the progressive platform. I mean, when we see Bernie speak and he says, we've got to make the Democrats understand, or we need millions of people in the Democratic Party to change things. That's the idea right there. That's the main idea. And overall, I will say that the agenda did not, overall, for me, the agenda was background to the real conversations I was having with attendees. So to sum it up, yeah, there are arguments to be made. There are criticisms to be made to the organizers, but to the working class folk who put it on, it was a wonderful organization. It was a wonderful event. So I gotta take my hat off to the workers who really made this something well produced and well oiled.
Okay, so for you, the main takeaway was more the interactions you could have with fellow, Democrats oriented around reforming the party, right? So that's what the People's Summit is?
No, actually, a lot of the attendees weren't the Dem-Enter people. I myself, I'm a member of Socialist Alternative out here in Seattle. There were Green Party people, there were Brand New Congress people, and as you know, Brand New Congress is running Democrats and Republicans under a progressive platform. There are DSA people, and I know DSA kind of wants to still work within the Democratic Party framework, but yeah, you have people from very different backgrounds, from different cities, different struggles, different fights, different levels of political and activist experience, all coming together and figuring out how do we go forward together. And yeah, the speakers, the sessions, some of them I really enjoyed, and some of them I felt didn't go far enough.
And that was one of the things I wanted to say was that, it seemed from what I saw that everybody who was there and in attendance was of a singular mindset, which is that we really need to change the direction this country's going. We need to apply anything that we can, and where it's like the Democrats are working without in Socialist Alternative. From the attendees, I was getting a sense of solidarity, and I was getting a sense of I don't want to say unity, because solidarity actually is a more apt description of it. They were coming together to address things that they had in common, they address issues they had in common by taking a common path forward. There was a lot of critique, though, which we'll get to later. But Brandon, what did you want to say?
Oh no, I was just being an asshole about the whole Dem thing. I mean, I just figured out, because I've seen those sort of critiques about the People's Summit online, so I was kind of just voicing the critic. But I feel like your description, Aaron, and John's addition to it was much more apt. So just again, I guess we're gonna do more broad stroke. Can you tell us a bit about what some of the sessions at the People's Summit were about?
Sure.
Yeah, what was your favorite one?
Oh, my favorite one. My favorite one was actually it was what was the title of it? It was basically feminism in journalism and the importance of journalism uh, to challenge. Oh, to cover. How did they put it? To cover power, not cover for power. And so this panel had David Sirota. It had the editor of the National Magazine, who I forget. It had Naomi Klein, one of my favorite authors, Sarah Jaffe, and Nomiki Konst from Young Turks. But one of the best things I heard was from David Sirota, who said, what we see on TV, on MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News and all that stuff, what we see there is something that's already been said, something that doesn't need to be said anymore, and that's definitely not the story. If you look to the spotlight, you're not going to find the story. What you need to go, he said, is to look to the dark corner. And that's what I want to explore. And then he'll start pulling strings and find, does this make sense? Is this a story? So yeah, I really enjoyed that because these are some of the people who I read their work. I mean, I read the books. They go into shape the worldviews of a lot of people, and to see them all kind of sitting there talking about the state of journalism right now, it was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting. So I would say that was pretty much my favorite.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I just spent the morning listening to like several podcasts that were detailed journalist accounts of a different side to the stories than what we're seeing in the mainstream. Like, I'll throw out some shout outs. I was listening to Chapo talking with Felix, talking about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and Iran and what's going on there with an expert and journalist who you probably will never see on mainstream. And then after that, I listened to Abby Martin be interviewed by Kevin, I can't pronounce his last name, and Ronnie Cow, and they were talking about Venezuela and like from a perspective that you'll never see on mainstream about Venezuela. And so, I mean, that's one of the most important things I feel about our entire movement was that, you know, the people who got, and I've said this numerous times on the discourse, I've said this numerous times in other locations, the divide in the general election and the divide in the primary, which is, I think, a more indicative election of where the country is going, was age. And the biggest difference between the ages was where they get their news source. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, Pew Journalism gave us a detailed data review of that in 2015, showing that people under 35 get their news from different locations than older people. And so, like you said, what you see on CNN, what you see on MSNBC, what you see on Fox, that's not the story. That's what is the sanitized version of what the story should be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not even just Iran and Qatar and all of these other places right now, or even Venezuela that's being knocked out of the mainstream. There's not even really any articles today about the AHCA and the secret Senate bill being even that is not being put to the forefront of, you know, any of the top newspapers in America or CNN.com. I think that it might have been Jeff Stein definitely tweeted out earlier that the Dems are not trying to go nuclear on the AHCA because it might prevent bipartisan dealing on Russia sanctions. And when they do talk about when certain journalists or certain media outlets do talk about these issues, right, specifically domestic issues like healthcare, they sort of devolve into that bipartisan or partisan or hyperpartisan gamesmanship narrative, right? Like this healthcare deal, this secrecy thing is really going to look bad for the Republicans. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like they're so divorced from the implications of that stuff. It's just like it becomes a game.
Yeah. So I have a good friend who lives in Chicago, and so I could save a little bit of money. He didn't have to pay for a hotel. But he's really insightful. And we were talking about how the media, the reason they all play the same story on there and they never talk about, you know, what's going on at home. What is the United States doing? How many countries are we bombing? The reason they don't talk about that is the same reason that like the Pussy Hat March and the March for Science can't talk about what's really happening and they shut down conversation is because they want us to think for the most part that everything is still okay. And all that we need to do is change a little bit here and there and get Trump out. So that's why you see those stories, and that's why people think calling your congressman is the only way to do something, is the only way to change something. So that's the reason they can't talk about the truth, is because they don't want us to be upset and actually do something about it.
I mean, even with the Pussy Hat March, you know, the more sanctioned, or rather, at least the more like mainstream sanctioned marches, there is that sort of habit of erasing the smaller narratives within those, right? Like, because like, so the March for Women was not just an anti-Trump march. The March for, I guess, the March for Truth was, you know, again, not just an anti-Trump march. The Science March also had aspects of decolonizing the sciences. Like there are smaller contingents of these marches that are focused on not just Trump, but the entire system that gave us Trump. But what the media does, it erases those aspects and makes it a little bit more palatable. It erases any kind of systemic critique to make it more palatable. And what they present in the media is like, look at all the people coming out to march against Trump's Russia ties. It's like, well, yeah, that might be 60% of the people there. You maybe 50, maybe even that, you know, 80%, but there is a 20% who's like, no, you don't understand. This is the, here are the larger, you know, the larger implications of this thing, and we do need to focus on them if we're going to actually extricate ourselves from this cycle of neoliberal, neo-fascist. Yeah. And like we can't live that way forever. But I do want to veer back into the People's Summit.
But that actually does veer right back into the People's Summit, because that was the main critique of the People's Summit, was that was actually exactly what it was doing. It was sanitizing all of these groups and all of these messages in order to make it a palatable thing within the Democratic Party. And I'll read some comments in a minute, but first I want to hear, Aaron, did you get that feeling while you were there at all?
I didn't see it as a, I forget how you put it, watering down or washing away that type of discussion, but I see and I understand the argument that, oh, well, it's their agenda and this is what they want to push. So of course they're not going to include things like that. And I mean, it's the same as being mad at Bernie for endorsing Hillary when the day he started his campaign, he said, I will endorse whoever wins, you know? So this is obviously the path that he wants to take. And this is his crew running this. So it's like, what did you expect? On one hand, I understand that. But on the other hand, I believe that we must attack this from inside and out, and to limit the discussion in any official capacity as far as speaking roles go, to limit that discussion to only working within the two-party system. I think it does water down the ideas, and if you truly believe that working within the two-party system is the fastest and best way to make sweeping national changes, then why wouldn't you be open to debating and defending that idea, and maybe even sharpening the idea? So that's one of my criticisms of the setting of the agenda and the spirit of the agenda.
Yeah, and so the comments are, Brendan, do you have something to say?
No, go ahead.
All right, so the comments I want to read are I'm just going to read them, so this is going to be a very bad video, but this is from Stephen Edwards. So for those who will be looking for the Socialist Alternative table at the People's Summit, the organizers of the People's Summit denied our request for a table, wouldn't accept our request to have Kshama Sawant as a speaker, and didn't invite Ginger Jensen or anyone from Vote Ginger Jensen campaign to speak about her brilliant, groundbreaking independent campaign for Minneapolis City Council. This is unfortunate because it will limit the discussions and debate on what strategies can win victories for our movements. We'll have members there nevertheless. Please look out for Ginger and others and listen up when we can get into the discussion. Last year, Councilmember Sawant, after being invited to speak on a panel, was shamefully and wrongfully told not to say anything on the subject of independent candidates. We will continue to engage in honest debate about what is best way forward for people in the oppressed. And then I'm publicly confirming that in my capacity as campaign manager for the Stein Baraka campaign, I made several requests to have Jill and or Ajamu speak at the People's Summit. I have never received a response.
Well, I mean, I think that. Well, yeah. Let's talk about that because when I brought up when I was being churlish in the beginning to mention like, oh, this is a dim only event, or I said some variation of that, I was hinting towards this exact thing, right? That there are people who are from outside two-party system who are lobbying to critique that there was literally, they were literally stonewalled, blacklisted from the event altogether, right? And I mean, there's two ways to look at that, right? So again, this is who's organizing, right? Like the people organizing this event are fully free to decide that, you know what, this is not like this particular event is aimed at working within the Democratic Party. Like we're going to do that, or rather working within a two-party system more broadly. If we can run more progressive Republicans and where that makes sense, then we'll do that. And I'll look at this like, well, if we're talking about actually getting out of this mess, maybe that involves actually dissolving two-party system, and the Democratic Party does not seem to be in any way trying to engage in that in that conversation. Like the conversation seems to be the only legitimate way to resist Trump is within the two-party system, within these prescribed ways, and so like therefore you have to work with us to do that. And also, and and working with us has certain demands. We're not going to we're not going to have a unified front in favor of single payer healthcare. We're not going to have a unified front in favor of $15 minimum wage. We're not going to have a unified front in favor of this progressive agenda. We're going to kind of fall back into a defensive and wait for Trump to keep effing up, and hopefully we can impeach him or something. And so from my perspective, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it all. That it is their agenda. They're gonna do what they want with it, and I don't think it should be any surprise because, yeah, it's true. Last year, Shama did speak because let me get this right. Are you guys? I don't know how familiar you guys are with Shama Sawant up here in Seattle. So she's our Socialist Alternative City Council member that has. She won her seat, and then she got reelected. She and Socialist Alternative ran on a platform of the Fight for 15, and we've done so many things for renters' rights and affordable housing. We joined the coalition for divesting from Wells Fargo, and when she speaks, the crowd lights up. The crowd is energized. We're looking for what next. We're looking to work together. And she's just electric and indomitable. And she was invited to speak last year. But because she called for an independent run for Bernie Sanders after what we all experienced during the primaries, yeah, she was sort of chastised. And she wrote an article expressing what she thought about the People's Summit. And if anyone would have read that article, which came out in 2016, they would have been like, oh no, yeah, she's probably not going to be invited back. But apparently the reason that she wasn't invited back was first that organizers said that, well, we want to focus on, what is it, political economy. And she has a PhD in economics, And then they said, well, we want to kind of avoid the star power. But Van Jones is up there. John Cusack, they gave him some time. So it was obvious that they didn't want the independent, the working class party, the 99% party to be a focal point. And I understand that they believe, and Bernie believes, that to get these sweeping changes nationally, they're going to need it, or they're going to need to work within the two-party system. But I think we need third parties. We need groups like Socialist Alternative, groups like DSA, which are blowing up, groups like Green Party, who are willing to stand up and say, no, this is what we demand. And by saying this, by being the first groups to say this, people can hear it and say, oh yeah, well, yeah, that makes total sense. Like in Seattle, there should be caps on move-in fees. There should be there should be renters' rights. There should be higher minimum wage, or there should be healthcare for all. The first person who says this, everyone looks and says, yeah, I believe that. But what you'll never get within the Democratic Party is they won't be their leadership. I'm not talking about the everyday voters. Their leadership won't be the first ones to say, yeah, fight for 15. Yeah, healthcare for all. And in fact, their leadership actively works against them, which is why I like to focus my efforts with building a party for the 99%, where everyone in my organization is on the same page working for something.
Right. And one of the things I find amazing is that the critiques and, you know, the silencing of certain voices from the people who are quote unquote progressives, it's reminiscent of Nina Turner being silenced at the DNC after she was giving similar critiques of the Democratic, the quote unquote progressive wing of that party, who are saying, hey, you know what, you're progressive enough and it's not far enough left. We need to do more. And they're silencing that as well. And it just, that's what struck me as the hypocritical aspect. And I agree with everything you just said there. I mean,
yeah.
we need more.
Well, I mean, there seems to be a specific, so in critiquing the People's March as not going far enough, I guess, which is what I'm doing, it went far enough to piss some people off, because the Democratic punditry, like this weekend, or at least, and so I'm assuming that this was the cause, like the People's Summit, along with Jeremy Corbyn winning and the reigniting of the Bernie would have won, you know, meme. They've been coming out of the woodwork to explain why you have to have closed primaries, why you have to have, you know, how Bernie is like your angry, like how like you're like your slovenly mooching college roommate who like is living and eating all of your kale and Greek yogurt and ruining your aesthetic, your aesthetic and your gestalt.
Excuse yourself from my mentions, please. That's what she said.
Yeah, like that. So like I'm assuming, like, and that's the funny thing, right? Like these little things that people are saying don't go far enough still manage to piss off the establishment. Like these little, like, you know, not even I wouldn't even say like actual concessions to the progressive wing of the party, but like just these little symbolic gestures, like, oh, we're gonna have a people summit, we're gonna talk about expanding the party's messaging, you know, developing a more proactive progressive platform to fight the Republicans and fight Trump. It's just like opening the primary so that we can have a better understanding of who is going to do better in the general election. Nope. Like that is like they actively resist any kind of accountability for themselves. Like they're actively resisting this kind of change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like we talked before. Just put shame to the idea of the meritocracy, which is a complete myth. But they subscribe to it so much of their own success and their own rise to power that to address any of this would be problematic. I mean, like, no one's even out there calling for, like I am, for like David Frum to be tried in The Hague. Like, no one's even calling for that kind of stuff that's that far left, and everyone's going nuts.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly just like, well, hey, what are the lessons to be learned from losing to Trump? Like what are the lessons here? And the answer is like,
no lessons.
Well, no lessons. No, like there's nothing to learn from Trump. Okay, well, what were the lessons to be learned from Jeremy Corbyn, like blowing the election out of the water despite the year plus of negative press? No lessons. Like there is nothing to learn here. The lesson is there's too much democracy. Really.
Right. But Macron, we're going to take some lessons from Macron, because Macron is the guy.
Yeah. There's too much democracy. Like that's the main takeaway from all, like, the way politics is going worldwide. Too much democracy, too many poor people voting. Really, we should have even more closed primaries where only landowning males can vote.
So, Brandon, you did bring up a point while I believe that we do need a party of the 99%, and I'm not a Dem-enter person, I believe that fight needs to be fought. And People's Summit and Dem-enter and all my friends who poured their heart and souls and money into the Florida and California DNC chair races, only to have billionaires install candidates into leadership. These are real people fighting for similar platform and similar goals that I'm fighting for, and they're doing it from the inside. So how you said that, people are responding to the People's Summit. People are responding to Bernie in front of 4,000 people saying the Democratic model is a failure. People are responding to Nina Turner going on there and saying that, they've lost 1,000 seats in the past 10 years. new report came out that said the DNC quarterly earnings, earnings, the donors, has been the lowest it has been since 2009. So people are responding to this and they're angry about it. So there is movement being made. You would just wish to see a conference go further, but I understand and respect that they believe that this is their agenda and they don't want to muddy that message.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. So I think that there are people out here who are, either hardcore dim enter, hardcore dim exit. Like we have to work within the two-party system because that's the best chance we have for getting printing the most damage, first of all, but also getting the most done the quickest. Like we have this apparatus in place that, has not a lot of seats, but more seats than any other party that's not Republicans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally amenable to that. If those people are like, okay, yeah, but the dim exit people are, that apparatus is so functionally corrupt and bankrupt that you can't actually work within it because they make that literally impossible. And so while it might seem appealing to actually take it over, it actually take less time to start your own party. And if you can't take over the government, you can't take over the majority seats, at least force the Democrats to pull to the left, force them to pull to the left by primarying them from outside the party, by running independent candidates who, if they won't support minimum wage, a minimum wage increase, we'll have an independent candidate do it. I'm sensitive to both of those concerns, right? And I guess my question to both those people, and you bring up a good point, with the Florida and the California DNC chair races, is that my question, and it's a question that I guess everyone should be thinking to themselves, whether you're dim enter or dim exit, is if you're dim enter, what will it actually take for you to leave them? Like at what point do you say Democratic Party is a lost cause? They will not, they are not going to support single payer. They're not going to support fixed minimum wage. They're literally just going to pull this. Well, in order to win, we have to be pragmatic. We have to be, willing to compromise on issues like healthcare. We have to be willing to compromise on issues like military spending. We have to be willing to compromise on issues like Social Security. And if you're dim exit, at what point do you say, okay, Democratic Party is actually turning around, and maybe I can lend them a little bit more support in this situation? I see there is a unified block of all Democratic senators for single payer healthcare. Good.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm dim exit, so I can answer for that. I mean, I think that in order for me to become dem enter, they would have to endorse Shama. That would be the thing that would, because she's popular in where she is. She's a candidate that is doing something that they can agree on in terms of politics and in terms of platform. And, that would be a perfect example. And the fact that they didn't even let her speak at this People's Summit makes me think that that's not ever going to be an option. It's one seat that they can give up that will show, hey, we're willing to work with a coalition of people who are further to the left of us, and we're willing to give the rising star who has shown that she's capable of doing this fight, capable of being successful in this fight, a chance and a platform. And the fact that they're not, and the fact that they're actively not doing it, shows that I believe that the party is corrupt. But I mean, then again, I'm older. I literally remember as a little kid rooting for Jesse Jackson and then seeing what they did to his campaign.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. Right? I don't want to present it. I don't want to present the two positions that sort of equal, though. I definitely don't want to do that.
Okay,
but I would say this is I get your point. I think your point is, I'm interrupting you because I think your point is well taken. It's they would have to show me that their main goal is. I mean, I'm not dim exit really, but they would have to show me that their main goal is not simply to gatekeep the left and leftism. Mm-hmm. But go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you, John. Finish your point about Jesse Jackson.
That was it. I mean, I watched what they did to Jesse Jackson. I watched what they did to Kucinich. I watched what they did to Dean. I watched what they done to all of these campaigns, and now I'm seeing it play out in real time with Bernie. It's it's the same story over and over and over again for the past 40 years. So there has to be a sea change, and that, I agree that might be the only way to get that sea change, would be that politics trumps party, meaning platform trumps party, not the other way around.
Yeah, and that's what it really should be. And I think I said it when we were leaving Philly last year. Because there were, you know, Green Party people, there were people that were Dem exit, there were delegates that were going to stay and try to fight. And I see us all as a part of one massive progressive wave crashing towards the same beach. And sometimes, and we might be fighting on different parts of the wave, but we're all going in the same direction. And sometimes we're going to be working towards the same exact goal, like single payer. Bernie calls it Medicare for all, single payer. We're going to have to form these coalitions, and actual coalitions, not one where I just put up a sign and say in my window that says, oh, I'm for single payer. No, let's show up. Let's show up together. My organization shows up with your organization for this cause. Let's show up to governor's office. Let's show up to city council's office together and testify together. Let's do disruption like we did in Seattle to divest from Wells Fargo. We shut down banks. We're shutting down banks at Chase banks. But we're not going to get this coalition if we demonize somebody who is not as pure as you think you are, right? So if I go in and say, oh, you Dementors, which I love the word Dementor because it's total Harry Potter stuff. You Dementors, you're so stupid. You're fighting in this worthless fight. The Democratic leadership is going to snuff you out at every chance, which they do. But just because the fight is difficult doesn't mean it's not worth having, and it doesn't mean I shouldn't support them, because we are working towards the same goals. They're just using a different mechanism. And I believe the inclusion of third-party ideas, like I'm speaking from Socialist Alternative in Seattle, where we are surrounded by Democratic leadership. This whole state is, you know, we got Democratic senators, we have Democratic city council, mayors, at least in Western Washington, mayors. And we still have to fight. They're still owned by like the building development lobbyists. So we're fighting the same fights, but you need third parties like my organization and Green Party and others to stand up and say, this is the level that we need you to be at. And once you start getting people on board with that, then the Democrats can come around. So is there hope for Dementor people? Sure. But that's just not where I personally want to spend my energy, but I support their fight and hope to fight with them on certain things.
On certain things. I think my point is that, and I think it goes to what Brandon was saying about them being completely corrupt, is that while that is a good, you make a fine point about how there is a good fight to be had there. I think that their energy would be a better place doing something else, more along the lines of, you know, Draft Bernie or Socialist Alternative or Green Party. I think that, and I see a lot of heartbreak in the future for those people who are putting that in. And it's almost like a little bit of empathy goes out. It's like, I've done this, I know this. My people I know who are much older than me have done this for much longer than I have, and they see the same thing. And so I think everyone who is on the Dementor side really has to listen to those voices who are telling them, you know, this is an institutional problem. This is not a problem with individual leaders. Like, you know, this isn't something that was new just when Neuratan took over CAP. Like, this is something that goes back 40 years, and you have to be aware that your chance of success is so slim and so small that you might want to energy somewhere else. What I back on that idea.
I mean, I just have less hubris than other people do. So my idea is that I don't think I'm smarter or capable or less corruptible than anyone else who's tried to change the Democratic Party. And so working within them, you know, to try to move up the ranks, to do something, to get to a place where I can actually affect change, seems like it's that built into that narrative, built into that method is the idea that I am just so much better or smarter than everyone else who's tried before me. And I think that that is a good way to find yourself corrupted. Like to think that you're just so much better or smarter, because con people love that. Like if you're a con person, you love the idea that the person who you're trying to con thinks they're too smart to be conned. And so John brings up a good point. It's not the Democratic Party. Like, this problem with the Democratic Party is not an individual one. Although the individuals who are also part of the problem are still there. It's like they're still there, but they've just been shuffled around. So like this is an institutional problem. This institution has its own inertia, has its own agency, it has its own demands. If you want to work within it, you guys say and do certain things whether you believe them or not. And until maybe one day you do believe them. But like, frankly, I think any of these goals are worthwhile. My only question becomes, at what point do you say this within the party is actually a waste of time and I need to stop? Because like the people who have been doing it for like 30 or 40 years or to even 20 years, who have watched the party go from Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton to right now, right? And they're still okay. I'm still reforming the party. It's like, I gotta say it. Like, you sound kind of as though you are enabling the party's bad behavior. And at a certain point, like, if you're unwilling to leave the party, if you are presenting the opinion of yourself that I'm a reformer, I'm a reformer of the Democratic Party, but you don't have like a metric or a breaking point where you say, okay, this party is too much for me, I'm leaving. There are better ways to help the party. Then you're kind of just an enabler. Like, if you're going to keep trying to bring people into a broken system in hopes of changing it, even though you've been able, I have to say, I think that you thought, and you end up in a situation where like you're just recruiting more bodies for the pyre.
Yeah, and so Aaron, you walked around, you saw a lot of people. I mean, like, I saw your pictures with some really people that I met at the DNC that I actually kind of missed, like Yane. I was like, oh man, Yane is there, and Tim Black, and all of those people. But also the people who were just in attendance who we might not know. What was your take of the conversations that were being had by those people? Like, what were they? What was the general feel there from it?
Yeah. So as I started finishing my brain dump on the plane, organizing my thoughts and getting to the conclusion of everything, for me, and I know the people that I directly had conversations with, it was the attendees that made the conference for us. It was a beautiful setting, well produced, delicious foods, and famous speakers and great ideas like that. But that was all background. After a session, I wasn't really talking about the importance of journalism. I was talking about, hey, what's going on in your city? What are you doing? What are your struggles? What's working? What's not? And some of the conversations were awkward, and like how do we form a true coalition where we truly understand each other without let's just say I'm talking to let's just say I want to reach out to the Black community or the LGBTQ community. If I'm not part of that, some of those conversations are going to be awkward, and I got to understand how to participate in these conversations and knowing my place in the space that they own, which is not my space. And only through these tough conversations will you be able to have actual meaningful growth. So these are the kind of ideas that I was considering and was and were being talked about there. And also there was a lot, like you mentioned, John, that a lot of these people I did meet in Philly. And that was an extremely challenging and stressful and fearful and confusing time for a lot of people, but it was also very cathartic. You remember probably that night in the rain when we met all the delegates and we're finally reunited like best friends. Having those bonds don't just go away. So these are the type of people that are going to the summit. We're not going in there like, oh, Bernie's going to save the day and our revolution is going to save the day and all this stuff. No, we're not like that. We understand now to see things critically. And so we get together, we review what just happened. We reviewed the agenda. We talked about the agenda. we talked about why some people were invited, why some people were disinvited or ignored. And we acknowledged all this stuff and said, okay, fine. But what are you doing in your city? How can I connect you with the right person? Here's some ideas that I'm doing. So this is really what the conversation was. And I wrote it up here. This is how I put it. It's that with respect to the speakers, I was most energized, educated, and inspired by my friends working on their causes and struggles. And you got to consider, these are people that are all volunteers, often under police and political pressure, working 9 to 5s with families. And I believe that many of the ideas that I walked away with and the connections made and the initiatives that are going forward, they could have been made if we held the conference in a warehouse and ordered a bunch of pizzas, I think.
I have a question. Was there a lot of media coverage of the People's Summit? Like, did you see any people from CNN? I don't recall seeing any. I subscribe to all of the news feeds, news, Twitter. So I don't recall seeing any articles about People's Summit. Did you like speak to any reporters?
There were yeah.
I mean,
I don't think it was covered by like those.
Not David Sirota or like people who were there to speak, but like actual
No, yeah. I don't think any of the major networks were there, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, but The Guardian, The Intercept, I think AJ, Unicorn Riot was there. They're not major, but I love Unicorn Riot. I want to give them a shout out.
They're awesome.
But yeah, so around that level, we're there. Jacobin magazine had a presence. And
shout out to Alex Press, who was there for Jacobin handing out flyers.
I know Jacobin was there. I mean, Jacobin was at the what was it, the one in New York City that I went to, who the name I can't recall now. Progressive something. I forgot what it's called.
I'm not familiar, but yeah, I mean, this is a level. That was a level of coverage. I know all those guys were kind of doing. They had some live shows within their booths at rather large booths. And of course, some of the other independent folk, I know people might criticize them. TYT was there. The Way with Anoa Changa was there. Tim Black, Benjamin Dixon. Well, you guys had representation, stuff like that. And The Real News with, I think Michael Senato is with The Real News. And they were promoting Nina Turner's new show. So there was a fair amount of that level of coverage.
Huh. Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit shocked. Did you see like Dave Weigel or anyone from like Washington Post or New York Times or any of those people there?
Yep.
Now, Dave Weigel was on Twitter talking about how they're like, if you want to vote in a Democratic primary, you should register as a Democrat because the Labor Party something. I don't understand how Labor Party is different from the Democratic Party. That was David Weigel's level of analysis of this.
Oh yeah, sounds very in depth. I got to go to a live taping of the Jimmy Dore show, and yeah, Jimmy Dore had a little bit of fun at Dave Weigel's expense there.
Yeah, that's I can imagine. I'm looking forward to seeing the clips from that. I saw your pictures that you posted from that, and
I'm sure the show will be put up pretty soon. It's definitely worth a look.
All right, I'll check it out. So I don't know. It just seems like that. The fact that there was no lack of institutional media there, actually, I don't know which side that lends credence to. Whether it lends credence to the fact that it was just a Dem operation, or whether it lends credence to the fact that they really have no interest in anybody who's there. What do you think, Brandon?
I think it's both. I think there's a lack of coherence. Like, right? I think there is a lack of coherence about where this fight is going. Like do we need to be? No, I think again, we're talking about like what would it take for people to go from Dem Exit to Dem Enter. It would be a willingness to not try to gatekeep all leftism, like being more amenable to their base, being more amenable to socialism, being more amenable to other stuff. At the same time, I think that, and this is something not a conspiracy, I'm not going to say, but like, I think that there is a certain amount of performativity in the People Summit. I think there's a certain amount. I was telling Maple Cocaine, the ex-editor in chief of New York Times, this on Twitter, when we were talking about Bernie Sanders going out there and talking shit about the Democratic Party, and then people like Joanne Reed getting so upset, and I was just like, but this is all performative. I was like, Bernie Sanders going out there and talking trash about the Democratic Party is 100% in their best interest, because it gives the people the impression that they actually allow dissent. Like Bernie Sanders going out there and saying, "Oh, well, Democratic Party, like their plan has been a failure. This has been that." Like constantly roasting them as he goes out there and raises money for them, or tries to get people to be more involved in their party. Yeah. It's like at a certain point, the People Summit, Bernie Sanders is positioned as I don't know, roaster, like official roaster Democratic Party, comes across to me as a way to give the illusion that change is on the horizon, that dissent is allowed, but when really it's more like, again, like it's a way to sheepdog people into the party and make sure that they feel like there's just enough room to work, to change things, that they don't try somewhere else. But my position is like, there's no reason you can't change the party outside the party. There's no reason you can't do that. I mean, other than some people feel it like saying that that's an entitled position.
Yeah, but I mean, Bernie as a sheepdog has been something that's been put forth as a long time, not just since the end of the election, but even before that, before he actually started surging in the polls. And I never really put much credence to it during the primary. I didn't put much credence to it afterwards. I kind of saw what he was trying to do, but I'm starting to come around to that theory, and it's kind of depressing. And mostly because of exactly what Brandon says. This is the best PR that the Democrats can get to get members on there, is to say, hey, we need a new direction, but at the same time still have the old guard still talking shit about Bernie. It's like, so you're creating a false sense of like there actually is a Democratic Party, and so people to come in, more people to do all their part of it in order to go. But meanwhile, like you said, in California, Florida, even my state, Rhode Island, like they're really just going with the same old, and that's all they're doing. I mean, even today with Jeff Stein putting out that they literally use that same old Obama trope of we need to get a bipartisan consensus on anything we're passing. So we're not going to go too hard against the AHCA in order so that we can get bipartisan sanctions against Russia, a country with an economy smaller than Italy.
And those sanctions, they're just tack-ons to the Iran sanction deal. Yeah, that like for some reason went through. Like that, they're not even new sanctions. There's like extra sanctions added to the Iran deal that went through the day after a terrorist attack in Tehran, which Bernie Sanders spoke about and said, "Hey, you know what, guys? Please don't sanction them right after this a terrorist attack by ISIS." And they went through and did it anyway.
Right.
Everyone from Elizabeth Warren to Joe Manchin.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, Brandon, you mentioned that there was this certain disconnect between the agenda, the speakers, and the attendees. That was definite, and I do want to speak as an attendee that, we weren't going there just to drink a lot of Kool-Aid. We were there to see each other, and if we got some good ideas, some new worldviews from speakers, that was bonus, but we were there to see each other, to organize with each other, and to see where we can take it from there. As far as the conformity of ideas presented by the agenda, I mean, what are you going to do? This is an agenda that they believe in. This is an agenda that Bernie believes in. Bernie typically does what he says he's going to do. If he says he's going to try to reform the Democratic Party, and then you build a summit around it, yeah, that's what they're going to do. Do I agree with it? No. Do I wish that alternative viewpoints and third-party viewpoints, independent-run viewpoints should have been presented alongside to even sharpen the idea or challenge the idea? Absolutely, they should have. But there is another conference coming up here in Seattle that's going to have groups like DSA, Socialist Alternative, People's Independent Party, and Draft Bernie. So to those who would say, oh, why don't you start your own conference then, or whatever, you know, people are. There's plenty of opportunity out there to do this kind of stuff. And like I said, I truly believe that the connections I made, the conversations I had, the tough lessons learned, I would have been able to get them in a warehouse with pizza. Because we're not, the people who are active in actually getting out there and working in their towns and cities, we're not there for the glitz and glamour. I'm not there to hobnob with John Cusack. I'm there to work. We recognize the moment that we're in, and we recognize the need for action, direct action, and inspiring others to take part. And with that said, we would have shared our ideas no matter where we were. And we're going to continue to. We're going to do it in Seattle. I'm sure there's other conferences coming up. I'm sure there's other meetings coming up. We're going to take these lessons back home to whether you're a member of Socialist Alternative, DSA, whether you're a member of Our Revolution. We're still mixing our ideas, and we're still pointing out different flaws in each other's organizations. No organization is perfect. And we're saying, how can I improve it? How can I take these lessons back? No one is, maybe some people completely did. I'm sure some people did. It was like, yeah, the only way forward is through Dem reform. But from the majority of conversations I had, that's not what happened. And yeah, it was great. I talked to a lot of inspiring people, a lot of colleagues, I would say activist colleagues that are doing some big shit in their cities. And it's proud just to get them all together in one place. So for prompting us to get together, thank you so much, People's Summit. I mean, it was great.
Well, I'm glad you had such a positive experience. I mean, I was seeing some of your tweets, and pretty much everything that you tweeted out throughout the conference was all about the positivity and the love that you were feeling. And I'm not exaggerating that word. I mean, like there was
yeah. I love those people. I love them.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I took away from it, was that, you know, as we can critique how it was organized or who was organizing it, the participants in it seemed to be above that level of critique. It seemed like they were there for themselves, and they were doing their own thing on their own, pushing whatever agenda, whatever message they had. And there was such a plethora of different ideas and different agendas that it made it absolutely worthwhile, because these networks of solidarity need to be built.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what's the upcoming event? What's it called? Do you have a name for it yet?
Oh man, I think I got a card from someone and I wrote the name on the back of it, but I don't know. I know it's coming up in Seattle in August, and yeah, I know for sure it's gonna be DSA, Socialist Alternative, Draft Bernie, and I believe Green Party. But as I come back and start talking to people here, because I go to all these events and know many people in different efforts, I'll start like inviting them, and let's see how many different groups we can get up here working towards the same goals.
Brendan, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't have any extra questions or final thoughts.
All right.
Wonderful talking to you about People Summit.
Well, can I give a quick shout out to a couple of campaigns that we got going on?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so up in Seattle right now, we are running. There are 2 independents running for office. One is Nikita Oliver. She's running under the banner of the People's Party in a heavily Democratic area right here in Seattle, of course. And she is a Black Lives Matter activist. She's a poet. She's an educator, and she's an attorney. And just listening to her words, listening to some of her poetry, man, she's got some powerful stuff and powerful life experience. And she's running on an affordable housing platform. And there's also John Grant. He's a Democratic Socialist of America member, also running on a housing platform. He was actually, I think he was part of the housing union or affordable housing movement. Don't quote me on that one, but he's running for city council. And I just think of how amazing it would be for Seattle to have a Socialist Alternative member on city council in Shama Sawant and a DSA member in John Grant on city council. Like, what could we get done? That would be amazing. So they're all backed. Both these candidates are backed by DSA, SA, and the Green Party here, and I'm sure other organizations. So be sure to check them out. And the final campaign I want to plug is Ginger Jensen. She's also a fellow Socialist Alternative member that was at the People's Summit, and she was just talking to everybody. Let's try and get this message out. She's running for city council in Minneapolis on the Fight for 15 platform. She's a former Fight for 15 leader. So be sure to check them out. And yeah, let's get some independent third parties in seats in local politics is what we're trying to do.
And for those of you who are looking for more on Ginger, Jordan actually interviewed her coming out of a conference for TYT. Jordan Sheridan did.
That's true. That's true. It's live on YouTube now.
Yep, and you can see it there. Also, for Aaron, we didn't talk about it, but Aaron is an incredibly skilled graphic artist, and you have to go check out his stuff. He does this amazing Day of the Dead remake of like pop. He calls them Pop Muertos, but they're pop fun, Funko like kind of characters that he's added Day of the Dead to, and he also does this amazing Day of the Dead Pokemon stuff. And so, where can they find that?
Yeah, you can find that at just at popmuertos.com. That's POPMUERTOS.com. Yeah, all those guys are at popmuertos.com. I'm gonna be I just did a bunch of dogs. I got 2 dogs. I got a Corgi and a Rottweiler, so I just drew them as that. And I'll be switching on to some Studio Ghibli, which is like Totoro, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Spirited Away, probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Well, thanks, John, for shouting that out.
No problem. Anytime. I mean, I've been following it for a while, and every time you tweet about it, I tweet out because I'm just amazed at not only how creative, but just how cool they are. I really love them.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right. So, Brandon, take us out.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed learning about the People's Summit and all of its associated things. Have a good day, evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this.